My son called in tears. "Mom, we need $50,000 for an emergency surgery." I was ready to send everything. But then I accidentally saw their vacation booking confirmation. I stayed quiet, transferred the money, but what arrived in their account made my son call back screaming. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching, get comfortable and relax, let's begin. The phone rang just as I was finishing with the roses. The evening was quiet, the only sounds the snip of my shears and the distant murmur of a lawnmower. I wiped my hands on my gardening apron, the damp soil leaving dark streaks on the faded fabric, and pulled the phone from my pocket. Marcus's name glowed on the screen. A warm feeling, the usual one, spread through my chest. Then I answered. His first sound was not a word. It was a choked, wet sob that twisted something vital inside me. My grip on the phone tightened. "Marcus, baby, what's wrong?" "Mom," his voice was shredded, strained with a panic I had not heard since he was a child and had fallen from his bike. "Mom, I don't know what to do." I was already moving toward the house, leaving my shears on the patio table. "Take a breath. Tell me, are you hurt?" "No, it's Chloe." He took a ragged breath, the performance of a man trying to be strong and failing. "There was an accident. She fell at the gym. It's her spine, Mom. They say she needs surgery immediately or she could lose mobility. Permanent nerve damage." I stopped in the doorway, the kitchen's cool shadow falling over me. The world narrowed to the crackle of the line and the sound of my son's manufactured grief. "My God, is she stable? Which hospital?" "She's at County General, but that's the problem." He let out another sob, a convincing one. "Her insurance from her new job, it hasn't kicked in yet. There's a 90-day waiting period. She's not covered. The surgeon, he won't schedule it without a guarantee of payment. They want $50,000 up front, just to start." The number hung in the air between us. $50,000. It was not an abstract figure. I knew its exact weight and shape in my life. It was a chunk of my pension fund, the one I had built over 28 years as a school administrator. It was security. It was a modest future. "They said it has to be now, Mom. Tomorrow morning at the latest, or they'll move her to a waiting list for the public ward, and who knows how long that will take. Every day, the damage gets worse." His voice broke again. "I've called everyone I know. I've exhausted everything. I have $12,000 in my savings, but that's for the rent, and it's not enough. I can't lose her, Mom." I believed him. Every fiber of my being, trained over a lifetime of loving him, accepted his truth. My mind painted the picture he offered. Chloe, vibrant and young, lying broken. My son, helpless and desperate. A clock ticking down in a sterile hospital room. The maternal algorithm in my heart computed the variables and produced a single, urgent solution. I had to fix it. I had to protect. "Okay," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Okay, Marcus, listen to me. We will handle this." "You have it." The hope in his voice was a sharp blade. "You can spare it." I did not think of spare. I thought of necessity. I have my retirement fund. There's a penalty for early withdrawal, but that doesn't matter now. "Oh, Mom, thank you, thank you." The tears sounded real. "I'll pay you back every cent, I swear on my life." "Don't think about that. Just be with Chloe. I'll need the hospital's billing information, the exact name for the wire." He had it ready. Of course he did. He recited the details with practiced clarity, the hospital's full legal name, the address for the financial office, a reference number he claimed they had given him. I wrote it down on the back of an envelope from the counter, my handwriting swift and sure. "I'll do it tonight," I said. "You're a lifesaver, Mom. Literally. I don't know what I'd do without you." We hung up. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. The familiar space, the cheerful yellow walls, the photos of Marcus at various ages on the refrigerator, the tidy row of ceramic canisters, seemed to hold its breath. I stood there for a full minute, my mind a blank white noise of purpose. Then I moved. I went to the small home office, the room that had been my command center for gradding papers and managing school budgets. I turned on the desk lamp, its warm pool of light isolating the computer and the paperwork to come. I logged into my retirement account. The numbers appeared on the screen, the culmination of a career of careful planning. I found the option for a hardship withdrawal. The form asked for a reason. I selected medical expenses. The system calculated the penalty. It was a significant sum, enough to make me wince under any other circumstance. I did not hesitate. I entered the amount, $50,000. I keyed in the banking details Marcus had provided. Each click of the keyboard was a deliberate, heavy sound. I requested a wire transfer for the next business day. A confirmation screen appeared, along with a warning about the irreversible nature of the transaction and the substantial early withdrawal tax implications. I read it all, and I clicked Submit. A final prompt asked for my verbal confirmation via a security call. 2 minutes later, my cell phone rang. An automated voice asked me to state my name and confirm the transaction amount. "Joyce Patterson," I said, my voice clear in the quiet room. "I confirm a withdrawal and wire transfer of $50,000. The call ended. It was done. I printed the receipt. The printer hummed and spat out the page. I held the warm paper in my hand, looking at the string of numbers that represented so much of my past labor and my future comfort, now destined for a hospital account I had never heard of. I felt a profound, hollowing fear, but it was not for my money. It was for my son bearing this burden. It was for Chloe facing this pain. It was the fear of a parent whose child is in crisis, a clean, sharp anxiety that overrides all other concerns. I folded the receipt and placed it in the center of my desk. I would need it for my taxes. I would need it to track the payment. I looked at the clock. It was just past 8. The business day was over. The wire would not move until the morning. I thought of Marcus at the hospital, holding Chloe's hand, waiting for this financial lifeline. I should call him back, I thought. I should offer more comfort. But I did not. A strange exhaustion had settled over me, a physical weight from the emotional sprint. I made a cup of tea and took it to the living room. I sat in my armchair, the one with the good reading light, and stared at the darkened television screen. I replayed the conversation in my head, every sob, every pleaded word. My son needed me. I had answered. That was my role. That was my function. The certainty of it was my only comfort. The room grew darker as the last of the twilight faded. I did not turn on another lamp. I sat in the dimness, sipping my cooling tea, a mother who had just given a piece of her future to save her child's present. The sacrifice felt righteous. It felt necessary. It felt in that moment like the very definition of love. I had no reason to believe it was anything else. The betrayal, as I would soon learn, was already complete. It was sleeping in a digital trail I had not thought to check, on a shared tablet charging silently in the next room. But that knowledge was for the next hour. In this one, I was simply a mother who had answered a desperate call. The anger, the calculation, the cold resolve, those were embryos waiting. The tea had gone cold in my hands. The darkness in the living room was complete, but I felt no urge to move. The emotional toll of the evening had settled into a kind of numb fatigue. I knew I should go to bed, but my body felt heavy in the chair. There was one practical thing left to do, I reasoned. I should email the transfer receipt to myself to have a digital copy. My laptop was in the office, but the family tablet was on the kitchen counter, still plugged in. It was easier to use. I pushed myself up and walked to the kitchen, turning on the overhead light. The sudden brightness made me blink. The tablet screen lit up as I picked it up, showing the time and a few notification icons. I tapped it open and navigated to my email. As I was logging in, a push notification banner slid down from the top of the screen. It was from a travel booking site. I almost dismissed it as spam. Then I saw the first line of the message. "Your luxury getaway is confirmed." My thumb froze over the screen. We had not booked a trip. I had not used this site in years, not since Marcus and I took a weekend trip to see his college graduation. A cold, thin wire of confusion threaded through my numbness. I tapped the notification. It opened to a vibrant, colorful itinerary. 7 days in paradise, ultimate Bali retreat. The dates were for the following week. The booking was in the name of Marcus Patterson. The passenger count was listed as 2. A payment confirmation for a deposit was referenced. The total cost, paid in full, was highlighted. It was a significant amount. My eyes scanned the details. A private villa with a plunge pool, first-class airline upgrades, a couple's massage package. I stood very still in the bright kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to grow louder. My mind, sluggish from distress, began a slow, grinding recalculation. The hospital wire, the urgent surgery, the sobbing phone call, this itinerary, these dates, this cost. A slow, sick heat began to spread from my chest outward. I placed the tablet carefully on the counter as if it were made of glass. My actions became very precise. I went back to the office and sat at my desk. I opened my laptop. I went to the travel site directly and searched for a login. I could not remember my password. I clicked Forgot Password. The recovery email was my own. I reset it. I logged in. The Bali itinerary was there in my booking history. It had been booked 3 days ago. The payment method was a credit card I did not recognize, ending in digits that were not mine. But the account was mine. Marcus must have used it, knowing I rarely checked it. He would have had the password from our old trip. I then did something I had never done before. I went at Chloe's social media profile. She had posted a story 6 hours ago. It was a video of her at a spin class, drenched in sweat, laughing into the camera. "Brutal, but so good," the caption read. The timestamp was from after Marcus had called me about her critical spinal injury. The sick heat solidified into a cold, dense stone in my stomach. I closed the laptop. I walked back to the kitchen. I looked at the tablet again, at the cheerful promise of white sand and blue water. I thought of the $50,000 wire hurtling through the banking system toward a fabricated hospital account. I thought of my son's voice, cracking with false tears. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, planned operation. He had crafted a story designed to trigger my most fundamental instinct to protect my child. He had used my love as a lever to pry open my bank account. The surgery, the urgency, the hospital details, all of it was fiction. The only real thing was his desire for a luxury vacation. I did not cry. I did not scream. A strange, quiet clarity descended upon me. The numbness shattered, but what emerged was not hysterical grief. It was a sharp, focused awareness. I looked around my kitchen, at the home I had maintained, at the life I had built through work and sacrifice. I felt the weight of my own history in these walls, and I saw, with brutal simplicity, how he had discounted it all. I picked up my phone. My fingers were steady. I called Sheila. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Joyce, everything okay? It's late." "Sheila," my voice sounded foreign to me, calm and flat. "I need you to come over now." She heard the tone. There was no hesitation. "I'm on my way." While I waited, I made more tea. The ritual of boiling water steeping the bag was a necessary anchor. I sat at the kitchen table. I did not look at the tablet again. I looked at the wall at a photo of Marcus at his high school graduation, his smile bright and full of future. I studied it as if seeing it for the first time. What had I missed? When had that future curdled into this? Sheila arrived within 15 minutes. She let herself in with the key I had given her years ago. She took one look at my face and her own expression tightened. She sat down across from me. "Tell me." I pushed the tablet across the table to her, the itinerary still displayed. I told her about the phone call. I told her about the wire transfer. I told her about Chloe's spin class video. I presented the facts in a clean, unadorned sequence, like evidence entered into a record. Sheila read the screen, her lips pressed into a thin, hard line. She scrolled. She put the tablet down. She looked at me, and her eyes held a fury so pure it almost warmed me. "That little bastard," she said, her voice low and vicious. "That conniving, selfish little bastard." I nodded. The confirmation from another person made the reality more concrete, more undeniable. "You have to stop the wire," she said immediately, leaning forward. "Call the bank first thing in the morning. Report a fraud." I sipped my tea. The warmth was fleeting. "The wire is already processing. It will complete tomorrow morning. I authorized it verbally. It is done." "Then you call the hospital, the fake one he gave you, and you tell them it's a mistake. You reverse it." "That would involve calling Marcus," I said. "It would involve confronting him. He would spin another story. He would have excuses. He would cry again, and a part of me might still want to believe him." I met her gaze. "I am not ready to hear his lies." Sheila stared at me. "So what are you going to do? Just let him steal $50,000 from you for a vacation. The cold stone in my stomach was organizing itself into a shape, a plan. It was vague, but its outlines were hardening. No, I said. I am not going to let him steal it. I looked at the cheerful Bali brochure on the tablet screen. He wanted $50,000. He provided banking details to receive it. I initiated the transfer. Joyce, what are you saying? I am saying the transaction is in motion. I felt a new sensation then, a spark igniting in the frozen cavern of my chest. It was not warmth. It was a clean, blue flame of resolve. He believes the money is coming. The hospital expects it. Everyone is playing their part. I set my cup down with a precise click. I think I will let them continue to believe that. Sheila's eyes widened slowly as she began to understand. A slow, grim smile touched her lips. Oh, I see. You're not stopping the play. You're just changing the script. Exactly. I looked at the graduation photo again. The boy in it was gone. In his place was a stranger who had tried to rob me, and I was no longer a victim. I was the author of this story. The money left my account. That is the truth he will see. What arrives at his destination, that will be a different truth. The void left by the betrayal was still there, a vast and empty space. But I was no longer falling into it. I was beginning to build a structure across it, piece by cold, calculated piece. The first piece was silence. The second was observation. The third would be a delivery, but not the one he was expecting. Sheila left just after midnight. The silence she left behind was different now. It was not empty, it was charged like the air before a storm. I did not go to bed. I sat at the kitchen table with a fresh notebook, the kind I used for grocery lists and gardening notes. I turned to a clean page. At the top, I wrote a single word: options. I listed them in neat, numbered lines. 1. Confront Marcus immediately. Demand the truth. 2. Contact the bank. Attempt to cancel the wire. 3. Allow the wire to proceed. Accept the loss. 4. Allow the wire to proceed, but control what is received. I looked at the list. Option 1 was emotional. It would lead to denials, more lies, and likely my own capitulation. My anger was still too new, too fragile. Faced with his performance, it might crumble into the old, forgiving love. I could not risk that. Option 2 was a legal scramble with low odds. The authorization was clear. Option 3 was surrender. Option 4 was not on any list a victim would make. It was a list for someone taking charge. I circled it. The practical considerations began. The wire was for $50,000. Marcus expected it to arrive in the account he had provided. The bank would process it. That was a fixed point. What happened after the funds landed was mutable. He would need to access them. He would likely try to transfer them out immediately to pay for the vacation. The account was in the hospital's name, but he controlled the details. It was a conduit. I needed to substitute the cargo. The idea, once abstract, began to form a concrete shape. It was absurd. It was perfect. It was a symbol he could not misunderstand. When the sky began to lighten from black to deep blue, I took a shower. The hot water did not warm the cold core of me. I dressed in comfortable slacks and a sweater. I made coffee. I performed each step of my morning routine with deliberate focus. I was building a wall of normalcy between the woman of last night and the woman of today. At 9:05 a.m., I called my bank. I used the secure line for my retirement account. A representative named David answered. I confirmed my identity. I initiated a substantial wire transfer yesterday evening, I said, my voice even. I have the reference number here. I wish to confirm it has been processed and sent. I heard the clicking of keys. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. The wire for $50,000 was sent at 8:02 a.m. this morning. It is in transit to the receiving institution. Thank you. Can you tell me, once it arrives, is there a way for me to see if it has been accessed? Withdrawn. We wouldn't have visibility into the recipient's account activity, David said politely. Once the funds are delivered, the transaction is complete from our end. You would need to contact the recipient for confirmation. I understand. Thank you for your help. I hung up. The first move was made. The money was gone from my account. To any observer, including Marcus when he checked, the deed was done. The sacrifice was complete. Now I had to craft the substitute. I drove to the nearest large toy store. The morning was bright and ordinary. I pushed a cart through the aisles filled with bright plastic and stuffed animals. I found the board game section. There, stacked neatly, were boxes of Monopoly. I selected the standard edition. I placed it in my cart. Then on a lower shelf, I saw the Monopoly Millionaire edition. It promised bigger bills. I took that one too. I went to the self-checkout. The scanner beeped twice. I paid with my debit card. The transaction felt surreal. Back home, I cleared the dining table. I opened both boxes. The colorful money fanned out in stacks of pink, blue, gold, and green. I separated all the high-denomination bills. $50,000 in Monopoly money is not a large physical stack. The highest bill in the standard game is $500. In the Millionaire edition, it is $1 million, but that was too cartoonish. I needed a semblance of realism. I settled on using the $500 bills. 100 of them would make $50,000. I counted out 100 pink $500 bills. The pile was about an inch thick. I found a sturdy, legal-sized envelope in my desk. I slid the Monopoly money inside. It fit perfectly. I sealed the flap. It felt light, insultingly light for the sum it purported to represent. Next, I needed a document. I opened my word processor. I created a formal-looking letter. I used a standard business font. I wrote, *, Hospital Administration, Wire Transfer Confirmation. This document confirms the successful wire transfer in the amount of $50,000, $50,000, to the account designated for patient Chloe Miller. Transaction code, WP78429B. For internal processing, a physical negotiable instrument is enclosed, representing the above sum. It was nonsense jargon, but it looked official. I printed it on my best parchment-style paper. I signed it with an illegible scrawl. I folded it and placed it in the envelope with the Monopoly money. The final step was the packaging. I needed a courier. I could not use the regular mail. It was too traceable back to me. I needed a neutral, untraceable method. I thought of the downtown courier services that catered to small businesses. They asked few questions. I dressed in a simple, forgettable coat and hat. I drove downtown, the envelope in a plain tote bag. I found a courier service next to a print shop. I walked in. A young man behind the counter looked up. "I need to send a package," I said. "Local." "Sure, address." I recited the address Marcus had given me for the hospital's financial office. It was an office building downtown, not a hospital. I had checked. It was a commercial mailbox service. "Sender information," he asked. "No sender. Anonymous delivery. It's a confidential settlement document." He shrugged, used to odd requests. He weighed the envelope. "Light, standard delivery. It'll go out this afternoon, be there tomorrow." I paid in cash. I received a receipt with a tracking number. I walked out. The sun was high now. I got in my car and sat for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel. The mechanics were in motion. The real wire was traveling to an empty account he controlled. The fake money was traveling to the same address. He would see the wire hit the account. He would go to retrieve the funds or transfer them. He would receive a notification of a physical delivery. He would be confused. He would open the envelope. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. My heart traitorously jumped. I looked at the screen. "Mom, just wanted to say thank you again. You have no idea what this means. Chloe is resting easier just knowing it's handled. I'll call you later. Love you." I stared at the words. The performance was continuing. He was setting the stage for his disappearance to Bali, reinforcing my belief in the crisis. The "love you" was a punctuation mark on the lie. I did not reply. I put the phone away. I started the car and drove home. The plan was no longer an idea. It was a sequence of events I had initiated. The uncertainty was gone. In its place was a patient certainty. I had not stopped his play. I had rewritten the third act. My role was no longer the dupe. I was the director, watching from the wings, waiting for the actor to discover the prop was not what he expected. The anger was still there, a deep, cold river under the ice. But on the surface, I was calm. I had made a decision. I had taken an action. The waiting now was not passive, it was strategic. I went home. I watered my plants. I made lunch. I waited for the world I had subtly altered to begin its shift. The waiting was a deliberate practice. I had set events in motion, and now I needed to observe their progression without interference. My normal routines became a cover. I gardened. I grocery shopped. I attended a community center book club meeting and discussed the novel with polite interest. Inside, I was monitoring a different story entirely. The first point of observation was the travel booking. I logged into the shared travel site account each evening. The Bali itinerary remained unchanged. The countdown to the departure date ticked down. 5 days. 4. I checked the airline's website directly using the booking reference. The seats were confirmed. The first-class upgrade was listed. Marcus had not canceled. He was proceeding, confident in his funding. The second point was digital. I had never been one for social media, but I created a discreet, anonymous account. I found Marcus's profiles. His posts were curated glimpses of a successful young professional. In the days following the wire transfer, a new pattern emerged. He posted a photo of his hand holding a coffee, the caption, "Long nights, what we do for family. Strength." Another showed a blurred, generic view of a hospital waiting area, sourced from the internet, I was sure. The caption, "The waiting is the hardest part. Prayers appreciated." The comments filled with supportive emojis and messages. His performance had an audience. Chloe's profile was less circumspect. She posted a photo of a new, expensive-looking swimsuit laid out on a bed. The caption, "Beach vibes coming soon. Airplane palm tree countdown." She had restricted the comments to friends only, but the meaning was clear to anyone who knew their secret. The juxtaposition was jarring, his manufactured solemnity, her eager anticipation. They were both playing their parts, but for different audiences. The third point of observation was financial. This required more than passive watching. My years as a school administrator had involved budgeting, auditing fundraisers, and navigating bureaucratic systems. I understood how to follow a paper trail, even a digital one. I did not have access to Marcus's accounts, of course, but I had other information. I sat at my desk one evening, a single lamp casting a pool of light on my notepad. I started with what I knew. His salary from his sales job was modest and commission-based. He leased a luxury car. He rented a high-rise apartment downtown. The math had never added up, but I had chalked it up to youthful optimism and debt. Now I saw it as a lifestyle sustained by pretense and likely by the expectation of future subsidies. I searched public records for his name. I found the record of his apartment lease. The monthly rent was a figure that made me sit back. It was more than my mortgage payment. I found a business profile for a company he had briefly tried to start a few years back, funded by a loan I had cosigned. The loan was paid off, he had said. I had never verified. I logged into my own credit report through a service I used for monitoring. I scanned the list of accounts. There, among my credit cards and mortgage, was a line of credit I did not recognize. It had been opened 2 years prior. The mailing address was my own, but the contact email was a variation of Marcus. My social security number was on it. He had taken the information from some document at my house, perhaps a tax form I had asked him to help me file. The credit line had a high limit. It was currently near capacity. The discovery did not surprise me. It felt like finding the final piece of a puzzle whose image I already knew. The betrayal was not a single event. It was a pattern, a habit. The $50,000 was merely the largest withdrawal from the bank of Mom he had been casually draining for years. I printed the credit report page. I added it to a folder I had started, a plain manila folder labeled Garden Planning. Inside were the printouts of the Bali itinerary, screenshots of his social media posts, and the courier receipt. It was not evidence for anyone else. It was evidence for me. A reality check against the lingering, sentimental ghost of the boy in the graduation photo. Sheila came over 2 days after the package was sent. She brought soup. "You look like you're thinking too hard," she said, setting the container on my kitchen table. "I am gathering data," I said. And it confirms everything. It's worse in the details. I told her about the line of credit. Her face hardened into an expression of grim satisfaction. "The little thief," she muttered. "So what's the status of our special delivery?" I checked the tracking number on my phone. It was delivered this morning at 10:15 a.m., signed for by M. Patterson. I looked up at her. "He retrieved it from the mailbox service." Sheila's eyebrows rose. "And the real wire?" "It would have arrived in that account yesterday. He would have seen the deposit. He would have gone to move the money. He would have found the envelope waiting." I could picture the sequence. The login to the bank account, the thrill of seeing the balance, then the notification of a physical delivery. The confusion, the walk to the mailbox place. The signing, the return to his apartment, the tearing open of the envelope. "What do you think he's doing right now?" Sheila asked, a spark of amusement in her eyes. "I think he is confused," I said. "I think he is staring at a pile of Monopoly money and a fake document. I think he is trying to reconcile it with the digital confirmation of the wire. He will check the account again. He will call the bank. He will be told the funds were delivered. He will look at the paper in his hand. The cognitive dissonance will take time to resolve." "He'll call you," Sheila stated. "Not immediately. He will try to fix it himself first. He will not want to alert me to a problem. That would raise questions about the hospital account. He will panic, but quietly. He will try to contact the receiving bank to report an error. They will tell him the funds were received. He will have nothing to show them but play money. He will hit a wall." I spoke calmly, outlining the likely steps as if analyzing a logistics problem. "You've built a maze for him," Sheila said, nodding slowly, "and he has to run through it." "Yes, and at the center of the maze, instead of a prize, is the truth. He will have to confront the fact that I know. There is no other explanation for what he received." I felt no triumph yet, only a steady, patient vigilance. The hook was set. Now I had to let the line run out, to let the strain build. That night I did not check the travel site. I did not look at social media. I turned off my phone. I read a book in my living room, a historical novel about a siege. The parallels were not lost on me, but I did not dwell on them. I focused on the words on the page, the simple act of following a narrative where I was not a character. The plan was no longer mine to steer. It had its own momentum. My role was to be ready, to be the silent, unmoving point he would eventually have to circle back to when his confusion turned to desperation. The waiting was active. It was the quiet of a hunter who has laid the snare and now stands perfectly still, listening for the rustle in the leaves. The rustle would come. I had only to be patient, and to ensure my voice, when I finally chose to use it, would be as calm and as clear as ice. The morning of their flight arrived with a crisp, blue sky. It was a perfect day for travel. I was in my backyard, methodically deadheading the spent blooms from my rose bushes. The shears made a clean, snipping sound. I knew their flight was at 1:05 p.m. I imagined the scene at the airport, the sleek international terminal, the buzz of departures. Marcus and Chloe would have arrived early for their first-class check-in. He would be wearing the expensive sunglasses he'd bought last year, another purchase I now questioned. Chloe would be in her new travel outfit. They would be giddy, a low hum of anticipatory excitement under their casual poses. They would be checking their phones, not for hospital updates, but for boarding passes. And at some point, Marcus would have tried to access the money. I had not heard from him in 3 days. The silence was strategic on both sides. He was avoiding me to maintain the fiction of the hospital vigil. I was avoiding him to let the pressure build in the sealed container of his own making. The package had been delivered. The bank had confirmed the wire. The contradiction was sitting in his apartment, a pile of colorful paper. He had been trying to solve it, I was sure. Calling banks, speaking to managers, presenting the fake document, only to be met with bureaucratic confusion and eventually suspicion. I finished with the roses and moved to the hydrangeas. My hands were steady. The garden was a place of order, where effort yielded visible, predictable results. It was a contrast to the human chaos I had set in motion. At 10:37 a.m., my phone, lying on the patio table beside my gardening gloves, buzzed once. A text notification. I put down my shears, wiped my hands on my apron, and picked up the phone. It was from Marcus. The message was not the polished performance of before. It was fragmented, confused. "Mom's the money," There's something wrong. I read the words. A small, tight sensation, not a smile but a contraction of recognition, passed through my chest. The first signal from the maze. I did not reply immediately. I placed the phone back on the table. I picked up the watering can and began to water the base of the hydrangeas, giving the roots a deep drink. The soil darkened, absorbing the water. The phone buzzed again, 2 minutes later. Did you get a confirmation from your bank? The wire went through. Then, a third message. They're saying it's here, but it's not. I need you to call them. Something's messed up. The tone was shifting from confusion to a low-grade panic. The plural, there, was interesting. He was personifying the bank, the system, as an entity that was deceiving him. He could not articulate the real problem, that the system showed the money, but the physical reality was a joke. He was caught in the trap of his own fraud. I finished watering. I took off my apron and hung it on the hook by the back door. I carried my tools to the shed and put them in their designated places. I washed my hands at the outdoor sink. I took my time. Each action was a deliberate pause, a stretch in the silence I controlled. I picked up the phone. I typed a reply, my thumbs moving slowly. I received a confirmation that the wire was sent and delivered. The reference number is WP7842, 9B, that is what I was given. I referenced the fake transaction code from my fabricated document. I was speaking his language, the language of the lie. I hit send. The response was almost immediate. He must have been clutching his phone. Delivered where? It's not in the account. Well, it is, but it's not accessible. And then there was this package. Ah, the package. He had broken down and mentioned it. The cognitive dissonance was becoming unbearable. He could not reconcile the digital truth with the physical one. He needed an explanation from the only other person who knew about the transaction, me, but he could not ask the right question without exposing his own deception. I wrote back, "A package? What do you mean? The hospital sent a package." I watched the 3 dots appear, then disappear, then appear again. He was struggling to compose a reply that made sense within his own fictional framework. The hospital would not send a package to a commercial mailbox. The story was fraying at the edges. Forget the package, that's not important. The money is frozen. The bank is asking questions. They mentioned fraud. I need you to call your bank and tell them it's a legitimate transfer. For Chloe's surgery, you have to vouch for it. His command was clear. Clean up his mess. Reinforce the lie to the authorities. Use my credibility to unfreeze his stolen funds. The entitlement, even in his panic, was breathtaking. I did not answer for 15 minutes. I went inside, made a cup of tea, and sat at the kitchen table. I let him sweat. Let him imagine the trip slipping away, the villa, the upgrades, all dissolving because of a clerical error he could not fix. Finally, I responded. I will look into it on my end, but these things take time. You should focus on Chloe. How is she today? It was a gentle push, a reminder of the role he was supposed to be playing. I wanted to hear him try to sustain it. The 3 dots lingered for a long time. She's stable, but this money thing is critical for the next phase. Please, Mom, just call them. Stable, a careful, non-committal word. Not better, not in recovery. The next phase. He was still thinking in terms of a script, but the lines were blurring. I'll make some calls, I wrote. Try not to worry. I put the phone down and sipped my tea. The quiet satisfaction was not in his panic, but in the precision of the trap. He was now in a position where he had to repeatedly ask me for help to access money he had stolen from me. Every text, every plea was an unwitting confession. He was weaving the rope tighter himself. I did not call my bank. There was nothing to call about. The wire was real and gone. The fraud investigation he mentioned was likely the result of him trying to explain the monopoly money to a bank teller or manager. A $50,000 wire followed by a customer presenting play money would trigger any institution's security protocols. The account was probably frozen, as he said. A flag was on his name. I opened my laptop. I went to the airline's website. I entered their booking reference. The status was still confirmed. But then I refreshed the page. The status changed. It now read, "Check-in required." It was 11:30 a.m. They had not checked in for their 1:05 p.m. international flight. The first-class upgrade would mean nothing if they weren't at the airport. I closed the laptop. I allowed myself to lean back in my chair. The first domino had tipped. The frantic text was not the beginning of the end, but it was the surest sign that the end had begun. The waiting was over. Now the reaction would build from confused texts to something louder, more desperate. I had only to remain calm, a steady, implacable presence on the other end of the line. The next move was his, and I knew what it would be. Confusion always gives way to anger when fear is the engine. He would call, and when he did, I would be ready. The phone rang at 12:17 p.m. I was in my favorite armchair, the one with the good reading light, though I was not reading. I had been sitting there, my hands folded in my lap, waiting. I looked at the screen. It was Marcus. I let it ring 3 times. I took a slow breath in and out. I answered. "Mom." His voice was not the controlled, performative sob of the first call. It was a raw, ragged shout, stripped of all pretense. "What did you do?" I said nothing. I let the silence hang, a blank canvas for his hysteria. "The bank, they're freezing everything. They're talking about a fraud investigation. They said the funds were flagged. And then I get this stupid, 'What did you send me?'" He was sputtering, his words tripping over each other in a torrent of panic and rage. "What did I send you, Marcus?" My voice was quiet level. "You sent me a goddamn envelope full of Monopoly money," he screamed. The words exploded through the speaker. $500 bills, a stack of fake, pink, fucking Monopoly money, and some fake hospital letter. What is wrong with you? I held the phone slightly away from my ear. The volume of his anger was physical, but it did not reach me. It was noise. "You told me you needed $50,000 for an emergency," I said, each word deliberate. "I sent $50,000. You sent paper, play money, from a game. The bank says the wire went through, but now they're saying the destination account is under review because of the physical presentation of non-negotiable instruments." He was parroting banking jargon, his voice cracking on the syllables. "They think I'm trying to launder something or run a scam. They locked the account. I can't access a cent. What did you do?" "I fulfilled your request," I repeated. "You provided the account details. I initiated the transfer. The money left my retirement fund. The bank has the confirmation. As for what arrived physically, perhaps there was an error in processing." I kept my tone neutral, almost bureaucratic. "An error?" he shrieked. "You put fake money in an envelope and mailed it to me. That's not an error. That's insane. Why would you do that? Chloe's surgery is today. They need that money now." The lie was his last resort, a crumbling wall he was trying to prop up with sheer volume. I decided to stop propping it with him. "Is it today?" I asked, a faint note of curiosity in my voice. "The surgery? That's odd. I saw a photo Chloe posted this morning. She was at a spin class. She looked quite healthy for someone facing major spinal surgery." The silence on the other end was sudden and total. It was the sound of the ground giving way. All the air seemed to leave his line. For a good 10 seconds, I heard only a faint, staticky breath. Then a lower, more dangerous voice emerged. "You've been spying on us." "I have eyes," I said, "and access to a shared travel account. Bali looks beautiful this time of year. The private villa with the plunge pool, the first-class upgrades. It must have been a terrible shock to plan all that, only to have the funding turn out to be play money." Another silence, shorter this time, filling with the dawning horror of comprehension. "You knew," he whispered. Then his voice rose again, boiling over with a new, venomous understanding. "You knew the whole time. You knew about Bali. You sent that joke on purpose. You set me up." "I responded to a financial request from my son," I said, my voice still calm. "You said it was a matter of life and mobility. I acted with urgency. The method of delivery and its form became my concern once the transaction was initiated. I decided that if the need was a game, the currency should be appropriate." "You ruined everything," he howled. The sound was pure, undiluted fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The vacation is non-refundable. The bank thinks I'm a criminal. Chloe is furious. all because you decided to play some stupid, petty mind game. Petty, I asked. The word hung in the air. I let it linger before I continued. You constructed an elaborate lie. You exploited my love and my life's savings to fund a luxury holiday. You involved a fictional medical crisis. You watched me worry. You accepted my sacrifice while you packed your swimsuit. And you call my response petty. I needed a break, he yelled, as if this justified it all. Do you know the pressure I'm under? This was my one chance. You had the money just sitting there. You weren't using it. There it was, the core belief. My money was idle, therefore his for the taking. My security was his opportunity. I felt the coldness in my chest solidify into something diamond hard. The money was not sitting there, I said, my voice dropping, becoming even quieter, which forced him to listen. It was working. It was ensuring I would not be a burden in my old age. It was the product of 28 years of work. It was not yours. You tried to steal it. And when you steal, Marcus, you must accept the risk that the treasure might turn out to be fool's gold. I'm your son, he screamed, the final desperate card. You are, I agreed. And that is the profound tragedy of this. You believed that title gave you the right to my treasury and my trust. You were mistaken. It only made the betrayal cut deeper. So what now? He spat. You've wrecked my credit, you've humiliated me, you've lost the 50 grand anyway with your stupid penalty. What did you accomplish? I accomplished clarity, I said. For me, the money is not lost. The wire was real, but the account it went to is one you control under a false name. The bank has frozen it. The funds are in limbo, part of an investigation. They may be recovered. They may not. That is your problem to solve with the authorities you have now attracted. As for me, I am clear on who you are, and you are clear on who I am not. I am not an ATM. I am not a fool. And I am no longer playing the role you wrote for me. He was breathing heavily, a ragged sound like a wounded animal. I could hear Chloe's voice in the background, sharp and questioning, but I could not make out the words. I have nothing more to say to you right now, I said. You should deal with the bank and with your travel arrangements. I understand they are quite strict about check-in times. I ended the call. I placed the phone on the side table. I looked at my hands. They were steady. The profound peace I felt was not happiness. It was the absence of a terrible, grinding uncertainty. The truth was out. The confrontation had happened. He knew I knew. The intricate, painful knot had been cut, not untied. The mess remained, but the binding tension was gone. I sat in the quiet of my living room. The sun came through the window and fell in a warm patch on the rug. I could still hear the echo of his screams in the quiet, but they were growing fainter, replaced by a solid, unshakable silence. The first and most violent wave had crashed against me, and I had not moved. I was still here. The script was now mine. The silence after ending that first call was not empty. It was heavy with the echo of his fury, but beneath that, there was a new and profound stillness in me. I knew it was not over. The bomb had been detonated, but the debris was still in the air. He would call back. Anger always circles back when it fails to destroy its target on the first pass. I had shown him a sliver of my knowledge, just enough to gut his narrative. Now he would need the whole story, if only to know the dimensions of the trap he was in. I made a fresh pot of tea. I took my cup and returned to my armchair. I positioned the phone on the side table within easy reach. I waited. The afternoon sun moved across the floor. My house was quiet, a familiar and comforting silence. I did not feel like a woman who had just provoked her only child. I felt like a judge who had heard the prosecution's case and was now awaiting the defense, knowing it had none. The phone rang again at 2:48 p.m. The screen showed his name, but the call was video this time. He wanted to see my face, to gauge my reaction, perhaps to intimidate me with his own. I accepted the call. His face filled the screen. It was flushed, his eyes wide and bloodshot. The handsome, composed mask was gone, replaced by the raw, frightened man underneath. He was in his apartment. I could see the expensive minimalist decor behind him. You have to fix this, he said, his voice lower now, strained. You have to call the bank and tell them it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. I took a sip of my tea before speaking. There was no misunderstanding, Marcus. You asked for $50,000 for a fabricated medical emergency. I wired $50,000 to the account you provided. The only misunderstanding was yours. You believed I would never discover the lie." "It wasn't like that," he insisted, but the force was gone. It was a reflex. "It was exactly like that," I said, my voice devoid of inflection. "Let me walk you through it so we are both clear. 3 days before you called me sobbing, you and Chloe booked a 7-day luxury vacation to Bali. You used our shared travel account, which I rarely check. You charged the deposit to a credit card I did not know you had. The balance was due this week. You needed my money to pay it." He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I continued. "You constructed the story about Chloe's spinal injury. You researched hospital details. You provided the routing number for a commercial mailbox service you control, posing as a hospital financial office. You called me when you knew I would be vulnerable, in my peaceful garden, and you performed a crisis. You knew my instinct would be to protect. You knew I would tap my retirement fund. You calculated the penalty and decided it was an acceptable cost to me." "I was going to pay you back," he whispered, "but it was a pathetic formality." "No, you were not," I stated. "You have never paid anything back, not the loan for your failed business, which I cosigned, not the loans for your rent gaps, and certainly not the line of credit you opened in my name 2 years ago, which is currently at its limit." I saw the blood drain from his face on the screen. He had not known I'd found that. "You have a pattern, Marcus. You see my life, my work, my security as a natural resource for your consumption. This was not a desperate mistake. It was the logical next step in a long-term habit." He found his voice, a thin thread of defiance. "So you decided to send me play money, to ruin my life, your own son." "I decided to show you the true value of your transaction," I said. "You traded my trust for a fantasy. The currency of a fantasy is pretend. So I paid you in pretend money. The wire was real because actions have consequences. The monopoly money was symbolic because your scheme was childish. The bank's fraud investigation is the natural result of trying to explain pretend money in a real financial system." He stared at me, his breathing shallow. "You've been planning this for days." "I have been observing," I corrected. "I have been connecting dots you left in plain sight. The travel confirmation, Chloe's social media posts, the credit report. You were not careful because you did not think you needed to be. You underestimated me. You saw a mother, a retiree, a source of funds. You did not see a person with a mind, with experience, with the capacity for decisive action." "What do you want from me?" he asked, and the question was stripped bare of all performance. It was the genuine, bewildered cry of someone facing unforeseen consequences. "I want nothing from you," I said. "I already have what I needed, the truth. I have clarity. This is not a negotiation. I am not offering you a way out. I am explaining the situation you have created for yourself. You have a frozen bank account under scrutiny. You have non-refundable travel plans you cannot afford. You have a partner who is presumably furious at being implicated in a fraud. And you have a mother who now sees you with clear eyes." He put his head in his hands, the phone wobbling. I could see the sheen of sweat on his forehead. "My credit, my job." "Those are your concerns," I said. "They are the consequences of your choices, just as my concern was the violation of my trust and the attempted theft of my security. I have addressed my concern. My part is done." "You can't just be done," he shouted, looking up, his face contorted. "You're my mother, you have to help me." "I did help you," I said, and for the first time, a sliver of my own ice-cold anger entered my tone, sharp and precise. "I helped you understand that mother is not a synonym for patron or victim. I helped you learn that my love is not a blank check. It has boundaries. You have just found one." I could see the collapse in his eyes, the final, crumbling realization that no amount of shouting, no tantrum, no appeal to filial duty would move me. The power dynamic he had relied on his entire life had inverted. He was powerless. "I have nothing more to say," I told him. "Do not contact me again unless it is with the documentation from the bank regarding the frozen funds or through a lawyer. This conversation is over." "Mom, please," he began, but I ended the call. I placed the phone face down on the table. My hand was steady. The monologue was delivered, every fact laid out, every lie named. There was no cathartic scream, no tears on my part. There was only the meticulous presentation of evidence and the pronouncement of the verdict. The emotional climax was not a burst of feeling, but the quiet, absolute certainty that I had spoken the final, definitive word on the matter. He could rage against the consequences, but he could not dispute the truth. I had reclaimed the narrative. The story of what happened between us was now mine. The silence after ending that final call was different. It was not just the absence of sound, but the cessation of a long, draining frequency that had been humming in the background of my life for years. The frequency of worry over Marcus, of managing his crises, of quietly subsidizing his choices. It was off. The quiet that remained was my own. I did not move from my chair for a long time. I assessed the internal damage. There was a hollow space where my son used to be, but I realized that version of him, the one I loved and worried over, had already been gone, replaced by the stranger who had orchestrated the Bali scheme. Today, I had simply stopped pretending otherwise. The grief was for the ghost, not the living man. It was a clean, sharp sorrow without confusion. The practical part of my mind engaged. I stood, took my teacup to the kitchen and washed it. I put the kettle on for a fresh pot. While it boiled, I opened my laptop. I went to the travel site and canceled my account. I went to my email and changed all my passwords methodically, starting with the one linked to my bank. I closed the unauthorized line of credit, filing the dispute forms online with the evidence I had printed. Each click was a brick in a new wall, a boundary established. As I worked, I considered the fate of the $50,000. It was in a frozen account, part of a fraud investigation. The bank would eventually sort it out. The funds might be returned to me, subject to penalties and taxes. They might be seized. It was out of my hands, and I found I could release it. The money had served its primary purpose. It had been the bait in the trap, the revealed truth. Its financial recovery was a secondary concern. Later that evening, Sheila arrived with a bottle of wine and a determined expression. She let herself in and found me at the dining table, the folder of evidence closed in front of me. "Well," she said, setting the wine down, "I've been on pins and needles all day. Talk to me." "It's done," I said. "I spoke to him. I laid out everything. The Bali trip, the credit line, all of it. He knows I know." Sheila's eyes gleamed. "And how did the little weasel take it?" "First with screaming, then with panic, finally with a kind of collapse." I recounted the 2 calls, the shift from rage to desperate bargaining to stunned silence. As I spoke, I felt detached, as if describing a scene from a film. Sheila listened, nodding slowly. When I finished, she uncorked the wine and poured 2 glasses. She handed one to me. "To justice served cold," she said, raising hers. I clinked my glass against hers. The wine was dry and sharp. I took a sip. "It doesn't feel like a celebration," I said honestly. "It feels like a surgical procedure, necessary, painful, and now there is a scar." "But you're healed," Sheila said. "Or you will be. He was a tumor, Joyce. You couldn't keep carrying him." "I know." I looked at the folder. "The consequences are his to manage now. The vacation is today. They missed their flight." Sheila pulled out her phone. "Let's see, shall we?" She navigated to Chloe's social media profile, which was public again. She turned the screen to me. The feed had changed. The aspirational travel photos were gone. The most recent post was a single, angry line. "When people show you who they are, believe them, starting over." It had been posted 2 hours ago. There were a handful of concerned comments asking what happened, but no reply. "Sounds like the partnership is experiencing technical difficulties," Sheila remarked dryly. I scrolled a little. Marcus's profile was still up, but he had not posted since the vague prayers post from days before. His digital facade had cracked. The performance was over. The comments on his last post now looked foolish, based on a lie his audience didn't know about. "The financial fallout will be worse," I said. "A frozen account under fraud review, creditors calling about the maxed-out line. The non-refundable vacation charges will still hit his card. His job in sales likely requires a clean credit check." I listed the outcomes without satisfaction. They were simply the logical effects. He had built a house of cards on a foundation of deception. I had turned on a fan. The collapse was structural, not personal. "Serves him right," Sheila said firmly. "He tried to rob his own mother. He doesn't get to skip away to Bali. He gets to sit in the mess he made. I finished my wine. Yes. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Sheila refilled our glasses. What will you do now? She asked. I will wait, I said. The bank will contact me as part of their investigation. I will cooperate truthfully. I will say I wired money to an account I believed belonged to a hospital based on my son's representations. I will show them his texts. They can have the correspondence. That is all. And him, what if he comes crawling back? I considered this. The hollow space inside me was real, but it was not an open door. It was a sealed chamber. If he contacts me, it will be with a new strategy, self-pity or manufactured remorse. I will listen if I choose to, but my trust is not a renewable resource. He exhausted it. I have nothing financial to offer him. The well is dry. He will have to solve his own problems for the first time in his life. Sheila reached over and squeezed my hand. You're going to be okay, you know, better than okay. I know, I said, and for the first time that day I felt the truth of it. The void was not filled with joy, but it was filled with a profound and solid peace. I was not celebrating another's downfall. I was acknowledging my own survival. I had passed through the fire of betrayal and emerged on the other side, scarred but whole and undeniably free. The weight I had carried for so long, the weight of his potential, his needs, his endless present was gone. My shoulders felt strangely light. The contrast was stark. In his apartment, there would be chaos, recriminations, financial terror. In my quiet dining room, there was 2 friends, a bottle of wine, and a clear, uncluttered future. The revenge was not in his suffering, but in my liberation. He had tried to take my security and my dignity. He had failed on both counts. I had reclaimed them, and in the process, I had discovered a strength I had forgotten I possessed. The chapter of my life defined solely by mother was closing. The next page was blank, and for the first time in decades, it was mine alone to fill. The morning after Sheila and I shared that bottle of wine, I awoke with a clarity of purpose I had not felt in years. The emotional storm had passed. The landscape of my life was altered, but it was now visible under a clear sky. My first task was to address the practical wreckage. I dressed in a simple blouse and slacks, my administrator's uniform, and sat at my desk. I called the bank's fraud department. After navigating automated menus, I reached a specialist named Linda. I identified myself and provided the wire transfer reference number. Yes, Mrs. Patterson, I see the transaction, Linda said, her voice professionally neutral. The recipient account was flagged following a customer inquiry involving unusual documentation. The funds are currently placed on an administrative hold pending review. What is the likely outcome? I asked. Given the information we have, a wire from a verified retirement account to an account under a name that does not match the stated purpose, the funds will likely be returned to the originator after the investigation concludes. There will be a processing fee. The timeline is approximately 30 to 60 business days. I understand, I said. Please proceed with whatever is required. I will cooperate fully. We may need a written statement regarding the nature of the transaction. I will provide one, I said. I did not elaborate. The statement would be factual. I sent money based on my son's representations of a medical emergency. That was all. I hung up. So the $50,000 was not lost. It was in bureaucratic purgatory, but it would likely come back to me, minus penalties and fees. The money had served its purpose as a catalyst. Its return would be a practical footnote, not a salvation. The question became, what would I do with it when it returned? The old answer would have been to replenish my retirement fund, to restore the security he had breached. But a new thought, fragile but persistent, had taken root. The money represented more than security now. It represented a choice he had tried to steal from me. I decided I would use it to make a different choice. A positive one. For me. Later that day, I drove to the community center where I sometimes volunteered and attended book club. I asked to speak to the director, a capable woman named Annette whom I knew from various committees. We sat in her small, sunlit office. Joyce, it's good to see you, Annette said. What can I do for you? I have a proposal, I said. I laid it out plainly. The vacant lot on the corner of Elm and 7th. The city owns it. It's an eyesore. I would like to fund its transformation into a community garden. A proper one with raised beds, a tool shed, a sitting area. A place where people can grow vegetables, flowers, where children can learn about plants. Annette's eyes widened. That's a wonderful idea, but the startup costs, the permits, the insurance. I am prepared to cover the initial costs, I said. I am thinking of an amount in the range of $50,000 for construction, soil, irrigation, first-year expenses. I would want it named after my mother, Eleanor Grant. She always believed beauty and sustenance should be shared. Annette was silent for a moment, taking it in. Joyce, that's incredibly generous. Are you sure? I have never been more sure, I said. My voice was firm. I have the skills to manage the project. Budgeting, scheduling, coordinating volunteers. I would need the center's sponsorship for insurance and to interface with the city, but I will handle the rest. Let me get the paperwork started, Annette said, a smile spreading across her face. This is exactly the kind of project we've dreamed of. I'll contact the city zoning office today. I left the community center feeling a surge of energy that was entirely new. It was not the quiet satisfaction of my garden at home. It was the expansive feeling of building something that would outlast me, that would benefit strangers, that would honor my mother's memory in a tangible way. It was the opposite of a secret, selfish vacation. It was a public, shared gift. Over the next week, I immersed myself in plans. I met with a landscaper recommended by the center. I drafted a budget spreadsheet, itemizing every cost: lumber for beds, high-quality soil, a drip irrigation system, a simple lockable shed, a bench engraved with my mother's name. The total estimate came to $48,000. I transferred the funds from my savings to a dedicated account for the project, knowing the retirement money would replenish it. This was not a withdrawal, it was an investment. Sheila became my chief volunteer. She showed up at my house with a notebook. All right, project director, give me a job. Publicity, I said. We need volunteers. Flyers, social media posts for the community center's page, sign-up sheets. On it, she said, grinning. This is a much better use of our cunning than sending fake money. One afternoon, I stood at the edge of the vacant lot with the landscaper, a quiet man named Ben. We walked the perimeter, discussing sunlight, drainage, and accessibility. He showed me sketches. I pointed to an area near the center. A sitting area here, with the bench, surrounded by fragrant herbs, lavender, rosemary. Good for pollinators, too, Ben noted, making a note on his tablet. I looked at the weed-choked, neglected space. In my mind's eye, I saw the raised beds in neat rows, the rich, dark soil, the green shoots of seedlings, the splash of color from marigolds and zinnias. I saw people from the neighborhood tending their plots, children watering plants, an old man sitting on my mother's bench in the sun. It was a vision of connected, quiet productivity. It was a legacy. That evening, I sat at my dining table with the final plans and budget. The paperwork from the city had been approved. The permits were in a folder. The community center's board had voted unanimously to sponsor the Eleanor Grant Community Garden. The first workday was scheduled for the following Saturday. I felt a profound sense of rightness. The money had been meant to secure my future against uncertainty. By using it this way, I was doing exactly that, just not in the way I had originally imagined. My security was not just in a bank balance. It was in my connection to my community, in the purposeful use of my skills, in the creation of something beautiful and useful from a barren patch of ground. It was in honoring the woman who taught me resilience, not the man who tried to exploit it. The hollow space inside me was not gone, but it was no longer empty. It was being filled with the granular details of compost and planting schedules, with the sound of Sheila's laughter over flyer designs, with the solid weight of a shovel handle in my hand. I was planting new seeds in my own life, in fertile soil I had prepared myself. The act of revenge had cleared the ground. Now I was building something upon it. The Eleanor Grant Community Garden opened on a Saturday in early June. The raised beds were filled with dark, rich soil. The drip irrigation lines snaked neatly between them. The bench, a simple stone slab with my mother's name and the dates of her life, sat in a circle of crushed gravel, surrounded by young lavender plants. The sun was warm, and the lot was no longer vacant. It was full of people from the neighborhood, volunteers, children with small watering cans, the air buzzing with conversation, and the sound of shovels tamping down earth. I stood near the bench, accepting thanks and handshakes. My role was not to be the center, but the facilitator. Annette from the community center gave a short speech. Sheila stood beside me, her arm linked through mine, a solid, silent presence of pride. The money from the bank had been returned the week before, minus the penalties and a processing fee. The amount was slightly less than $50,000. I transferred it into my retirement account, replenishing the breach. The garden had been funded from my savings, but the symbolic restoration was complete. The cycle was closed. The resources he had tried to take were back where they belonged, and they had also spawned something new and good in the world. Later that afternoon, as the crowd thinned and people began to drift home with their assigned plots mapped out, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I excused myself and walked to a quieter corner of the garden, near the tool shed. The caller ID showed Marcus's name. I had not heard from him in nearly 3 months. I had seen, through the necessary channels of closing the fraudulent line of credit, that his financial situation was difficult. The bank had closed the frozen account and returned the funds to me. He would have been left with the penalties from the travel company, the credit card debt, and the mark of the investigation. I felt no pleasure in this knowledge. It was simply a factual outcome. I answered the call. "Hello, Marcus." "Mom," his voice was quiet, subdued. There was no performance in it now. It sounded tired. "I saw online. The community center posted about the garden opening, named for Grandma." "Yes," I said. "It opened today." A pause. "It looks nice in the pictures." "It is." I waited. I would not help him. "I wanted to." He stopped, cleared his throat. "I don't really know how to say this. I'm sorry for what I did. It was wrong, it was cruel, and stupid." The words hung in the air between us. I examined them. They were the correct words. They lacked the theatrical flair of his past lies. They sounded, for the first time, like they might have cost him something to say. "I hear you," I said. It was not acceptance. It was acknowledgement. "I've lost a lot," he continued, his voice strained. "Chloe left. The job let me go. I had to move. I'm dealing with it. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did." "I know you know," I said. "I made sure of that." Another pause, longer this time. "The monopoly money," he said, and I could hear a faint, bewildered shake in his voice. That was a message I couldn't ignore. "It was the truth of the transaction," I said. "You traded real trust for a fantasy. I paid you in fantasy currency. It seemed accurate." He didn't argue. I guess I deserved it. "That is not for me to say," I replied. "My action was about defining the reality of the situation for myself. Your deserving was your own calculation to make." We were both silent for a moment. I watched a bee land on a lavender spike, its legs dusty with pollen. "Is there any chance we could talk sometime?" he asked. The question was hesitant, devoid of demand. "We are talking now," I said. "As for the future, I cannot say. My trust is not something you can apologize back into existence. It is gone. What remains is a biological connection and a history, most of which I am currently reevaluating. If you wish to have a relationship with me moving forward, it will be as an adult with another adult. There will be no finances involved, no emergencies, no lies. It would be a relationship based on mutual respect, or it will not exist at all." The terms were clear, spoken without heat. They were the boundaries of the new landscape. "I understand," he said quietly. It sounded like he finally did. "I have to go now," I said. "The garden needs closing up." "Okay, Mom, thank you for taking my call." I ended the conversation. I stood for a moment, the phone in my hand, feeling the sun on my skin. The apology did not fill the hollow space. Nothing could. But it did not reopen the wound, either. It was a piece of data added to the file. It changed nothing about the past, and it guaranteed nothing about the future. It simply was. I walked back to the bench. Sheila was sitting there, waiting for me. She looked up, a question in her eyes. "It was Marcus," I said, sitting beside her. "He apologized." Sheila nodded slowly. Do you believe him? I believe he is sorry for the consequences, I said. Whether he is sorry for the betrayal or capable of genuine change, only time will tell. It is no longer my primary concern. Good, she said, patting my hand. We sat in comfortable silence as the shadows lengthened across the new garden. The scent of lavender and turned earth filled the air. I looked at the rows of freshly planted beds, the neat lines, the potential in the soil. I thought of my mother, a woman of immense practicality and quiet strength, who had tended her own small plot behind our house. She would have approved of this. The revenge was complete, but it was not the end of the story. It was the turning point. It had cleared the poisoned ground of a dysfunctional relationship. It had reclaimed my resources and my dignity. It had given me the clarity to build something new, both outside in this lot and inside myself. I was not the woman I had been before the phone call. That woman was trusting, defined by sacrifice, her love a wide-open door. I was not a bitter woman either, defined by the injury. I was something else. A woman who had been tested, who had seen a terrible truth, and who had chosen to respond not with collapse, but with precision, and then with creation. My love for my son was not gone, but it was now housed in a stronger structure, one with walls and a locked gate. It was a love that could acknowledge his existence without sacrificing my own. The circle was not unbroken. It had been shattered, but I had gathered the pieces and used them to build a different shape, a garden, a legacy, a life on my own terms. The circle was now a path leading forward. I sat on my mother's bench in the garden I had built, a woman in her prime, whole and at peace. The story was over. My life was not.